everyone. Welcome to the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors meeting for October 28, 2019. I'll call the meeting to order. The first item of business is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Jeff has moved, Santos has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 3 is to receive comments from the public. Any members of the public wanting to address the board on a subject that's not already on the agenda, please have at it. Anyone? Anyone? Going once, going twice, no sale. Item 4, public hearing on a request from Judith Ann Nielsen, record owner, and Bill and Jody Simon, proposed buyers, to rezone approximately 20.53 acres in the southeast west corner of Section 1, Township 78 North, Range 4 West from A1 Agricultural District to R1 Residential District.
Morning.
Mr. Furness.
I believe the proposed buyers are here this morning. If you have any questions for them as to the intent on this property, I would just offer some staff comments that this is really one of those properties that, in my mind, is kind of a slam dunk for residential development rezoning, given the proximity to the existing city limits of West Liberty. It's right on the back steps there of West Liberty. If you look at our comprehensive land use plan, it talks about any type of development, but particularly residential, in areas where services like sewer, water are already there or can be easily extended proximity to fire departments and parks. This is obviously within a 2-mile general development zone of any existing city limits. This is off of Garfield Avenue, which is a fully paved road. It's not an economically, it's a chunk of farm ground that is not prime farm ground. It's agricultural, but it has very little tillable value. It's not a large enough tract to be economically sustainable as a piece of farm ground, even though it's, it has a little bit of tillable. It just really meets all the criteria for residential rezoning, given all
Eric,
the
to refresh my memory, I'm trying to remember the map. Was that contiguous with the current city limits?
It's not exactly contiguous.
There was a couple small ag parcels right there.
There's a couple small ag parcels. I think in your packets, you maybe would have a map that shows some of the city limits. Actually, directly across the road is probably closer in proximity to some existing. They've extended farther north on the.
And that's the one they just annexed a couple years ago.
They did. They annexed a large chunk on the west side of Garfield to the north there and extended the city limits. There's a property that's kind of an island that's in the county. We've been working through a foreclosure and a nuisance issue trying to get that piece cleaned up that butts right up against the city limits. It will all pretty much be residential development in that area. I know that the proposed buyers are already in contact with the city of West Liberty and discussing sewer and water. I don't know that that's been finalized yet, but there's adequate room and the ability to do wells and septic here. And obviously, any subdivision would be further proceedings, further consideration design. This is simply rezoning.
And this is consistent with the city of West Liberty's land use plan, as I recall.
Yeah, it's residential use, parks and sports stuff to the east there. So, and we did not receive any correspondence, no negative feedback at the rezoning hearings with the zoning commission. We had a couple people that called with questions anytime, some neighboring properties, but no feedback.
There's a lot of slope on that to the north that falls down in that drainage, isn't there?
There is some, so obviously development would be somewhat limited. You're not gonna put, 20 lots in there, but it does have development potential. We just have to work with the existing topography. I don't think that that's the buyer's intent at all, is 20-lot subdivision, and they could probably speak to what their intent is if you're interested. But yeah, there's some slope there that contributes to the lack of agricultural potential as well.
This is just a request from go A1 to R1.
Correct.
Simple, right?
Yes.
Eric, help me out. I'm looking on Magic and I see a 4.5 roughly acre parcel. Where's the other 16 acres? Is it still all part of that 1051 Garfield?
No, it should be 20.53.
Maybe it's just got the wrong map. That does look bigger than 4.63.
Yeah. If I can
It may just be wrong.
here.
Yeah, okay, maybe it just has the wrong area.
If you click on the parcel report, it should show 2025-3.
Yep, okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Alright, beautiful.
But there is a little bit of floodplain down, right along that creek, obviously, where development's not gonna occur, but overall, I think it's easy to see that the ag potential here is pretty limited, so.
How far are they from the sewer water from the city, you know?
Existing,
I think it's 850 feet.
well, that's some existing city limits, measurements that I did. I don't know that they've got it all finished yet in some of their development areas.
East 17th Street.
Yeah, probably that would be the closest, so they're looking at no more than 1,000 feet, I would guess, at the most.
Yeah, that's close.
Just for our entertainment, do you know what they're planning on building or take the speed? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're hoping, you say when, or,
What are you planning?
oh, just a home for ourselves, and then, we had a dream of maybe having some lots for our kids if they wanna move out someday. And that's what we were thinking.
If we can get it rezoned, we won't tear down the existing farmhouse that's there. So so we could put a second one on right away for ourselves, and probably within 3 years, another one for one of our sons, and then after that, it's up in the air.
That's nice, man.
We need a motion to approve.
Well, first we need to close the public hearing. Sorry? Anyone else?
I'm good.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Jeff has moved. Scott is second. It's roll call. Santos?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
I vote aye, Scott?
Aye.
And Deb? Aye. Public hearing is now closed. Now would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Santos has moved. Scott is seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the ordinance rezoning approximately 20.53 acres as presented from A1 to R1. This is our first of 3 hearings. Roll call vote. Doug? Aye. Scott?
Aye.
I vote aye. Jeff?
Aye.
And Santos?
Aye.
All right, so we'll have 2 more hearings. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is review, review and possible action to approve a letter of agreement between Tallgrass Archaeology LLC and Muscatine County to perform consultation work through the Field Services Program associated with Historic Resources Development Program in conjunction with an evaluation of residential areas in Wilton and West Liberty for potential National Register of Historic Places eligibility. Becky Allgood. Good morning, Becky.
Good morning. This is just, we're just trying to keep all the plates spinning. We have, we're on our way with the historic jail. We are waiting to hear for our CLG grant for the country churches, no, schools and historic churches. And so now this is just our next step. This is part of our planning for preservation that we did in the beginning, and it's historic neighborhoods, and we're gonna look outside of Muscatine, so it'll be West Liberty, Wilton, maybe Nichols. She'll look at our planning for preservation and see where we go next. So it's pretty much next steps. And we got a field services grant to do that. She's just asking for, looks like some mileage, $31.
Well, I thought it was 47.
Well, 47, well, whatever. I'll throw that in.
I think you got
I can cover that,
47
I
bucks,
can cover
maybe.
that, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll move to approve this.
Jeff has moved. Is there a second? Second. Doug is seconded. Any further discussion? Thank you, Becky. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Item number 6, items with County Engineer Keith White. Good morning, Keith. First up is, I understand, discussion and possible action to approve a contract bond and certificate of insurance for the Salisbury flood repairs.
Good morning. Yeah, we have the contract, the bond, and the certificate of insurance on the project entitled Salisbury Flood Repairs 2019. Bronze Excavating of Muscatine, if you recall, was the low and awarded it a contract of $39,025.
I'll move to approve.
Jeff has moved.
Second.
second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the contract with Bronze Excavating Muscatine for $39,025, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion is approved.
We have one utility permit this morning with Mid-American Energy Company of Urbandale, Iowa. And they are doing some work on a natural gas transmission pipeline involving us where it crosses Tombstone Trail, which basically is sort of the entrance to the Clark's Ferry campground. But the work is of the nature, and that little piece of there is paved, but it's of the nature that they have to open, cut it, dig things up, do their work, put it back, pave it back. Obviously, they have to coordinate with the Army Corps, who owns that campground or operates that campground, which they have done and are doing, and with the seasonal cottages that are down there too, which is the way the Corps wanted it done. So that's what that's for.
I'll move to approve.
Jeff has moved. Second. Doug is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes.
And you should have had in the packet the weed commissioner's report. Which has to go, be submitted every year.
I'll move to approve.
Jeff has moved to approve. Scott has seconded. Any discussion on the weed commissioner's report?
What is that?
Weeds.
I know. What are we doing? What is it? Are we sending somebody to report what weeds we see in our area? Or
It's a salad.
Well, I don't know the word traditionally, but you have asked our roadside manager to serve as your weed commissioner, board's weed commissioner, which doesn't have to be, could be somebody else, but he's done that since before I came here, and this is a report that's required to submit to the Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship, to the state weed commissioner, showing what he's seen in the county as far as weeds and what he's dealt with and what types and volumes of chemicals he has applied.
So then the herbicides at the end are basically put in to administer or control those.
Yeah. I think the main things that he deals with are brush and Canada thistle, I think, are the main things.
It's like knotweed and Kansas, this one is that one.
Yeah.
Thank you, I just didn't know we had a weed commission.
Yeah, I mean, the board's required to have a weed commission.
I like it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the 2019 Weed Commissioner's Report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. Projects update, Keith.
Projects update, not a lot of change from the last time I was here. I will note that Iowa did get the patch and repair work on Bayfield done, so that the embargo is off there. And that was, changed into the end of our hot mix maintenance contract, so we'll be closing that project out now. And we've got the, let's see, well, at North Isaac box bridge replacement, I noted that we are still awaiting seeding, which will be temporary. The other one on 155th, they got the majority of the excess dirt hauled out last week, and this week they're working on shaping and placing revetment. We're hoping that they'll get the road open next week. It's of course weather dependent. The contract that you just signed, we'll be signing on with Salisbury Flood and Repairs. We have a pre-con scheduled with Bronze today. They hope to get started right away on that work. And design, other than the 3 projects we have in the November 19th DOT letting, no changes there.
Any questions? Thank you, Keith. Anything else for us?
I do not have anything else.
All right, sir, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, moving right along to item number 7, which is discussion and direction regarding continued participation in the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Disability Services Region. Again, our good friend Felicia Toppert is here.
Good morning.
Good morning, Felicia.
I sent you all the list of SEAL board members and a list of each one of the board of supervisors and their chairs. I sent you the comparison of the 20-year agreement between Eastern Iowa and the SEAL region. Do you have any questions about that?
Any questions? I was looking at a question about the levy information that you sent out from the city region. It looks like there's kind of a wide variance in what they've been levying or what they have levied.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know, is that like a temporary thing? Some counties levied 0, some counties, levied about 75% of the max. Nobody levied the maximum. Do you know how they figure that out? I assume that they work pretty well in lockstep to generate that. Do you have any insight to that?
I don't. I have a meeting with the SEAL CEO this week, and that's one of my questions for her.
I assume it has something to do with the county's fund balances. If their fund balances were high, they were dropping back their levy to be within.
Could very well be, yeah.
That's what it looked like to me, as they're trying to meet the county level fund balances. Because there are requirements there too.
It's interesting, looking at the population, there's 2 counties that are about our size, the Moline County, Burlington, and Lee, of course. And then, but even so, with 8 counties, as opposed to our 5, there's really only about half the people that in that region that are in our current region. So, obviously, there's not a huge rural center that sucks funding out of any of those.
And as you noticed in the comparison of the 28Es, they utilize county staffs, county directors to carry out the functions of the management of the region. Whereby, for the Eastern Iowa region, the region purchases the CEO and also purchases all of the management of the crisis system.
So rephrase that, so you're telling me that like the crisis system in the SEAL region would be managed by staff?
Yes,
Versus like the contract we've been discussing with Robert Young Center?
that's correct. And each one of the directors are on different teams as it relates to the different functions of managing those contracts and that sort of thing.
So a little more about that, Felicia, trying to understand the full, so my understanding with like the Robert Young contract is they're not necessarily a direct service provider on most of these contracts. They're more or less what I'll call them a sourcing manager, and then they're looking for compliance to contract and some of that. Is that a fair statement? And so you're saying those roles are being handled by county staff in the SEAL region, and then they're directly the region will be contracting with the service providers independent of that.
That's correct.
So we've basically reduced a layer of management as I would see it.
Correct.
They're just like a labor contractor, aren't they?
Yes.
That was one of my concerns with regionalization from day one, was we were gonna add another layer of bureaucracy to suck more funding out of an already challenging area for funding. and we weren't gonna get all the dollars to direct service that we really want. And so I like that the seal region's approach. I'm not real happy with ours. But we seem to have added a layer in there, which adds cost, always.
Well, and that doesn't preclude, the Eastern Iowa region from moving to that kind of a model, if the
Right.
board so chooses.
Right.
But at this point, the management team is planning to hire an outside, child behavioral health coordinator.
The management team of the Eastern Iowa region.
Yes. That proposal will go to the board, I imagine, at their next meeting or two.
My understanding is that the legislation on the child mental health has really not been set. Is that a correct statement?
Not exactly. There are very specific things that need to be done by July 1st, 2020. And one of those is to have a child mental health coordinator in place. The SEAL region already has that, and it's one of the directors.
Yeah.
Any other questions about what I sent out?
So, we talked about the pay program that we have in place now. There's nothing like that they have right now, the SEAL program, as far as helping the payments for those that we're servicing now, as far as payments.
No, they do.
You talking about the trust program?
Trustee program?
Yeah.
No, they don't carry the trust program. And I wanted to, because you asked me about that, and I wanted to give you kind of a proposal or something to contemplate. And this is a funny comparison between FY20 and FY21 and how it would be possible to maintain that trust program. And as you'll notice, if you go to the far column and variances, what I basically did was I put the trust folks and some accounting folks into Fund 1 to the tune of $201,686. And I moved those benefits of those folks into Fund 2, $84,484. And that removes $286,170 from mental health. That leaves, what I did was I left myself 100% in mental health, and I left an accounting person in mental health. And Sherry tells me that that change is
14 cents.
14 cents.
14
On
cents.
the levy?
Mhm.
And there are some things that could be looked at in the general assistance budget to make, reduce that to lower than that.
So if I understand correctly, you're basically contemplating taking services that the state does not directly recognize as mental health expenses and moving them into being paid from another fund, not from our mental fund, in order to free us up some money in the mental.
Is that our Fund 1,
Correct.
our general fund, essentially where we pay for our general assistance budget and some of those others?
It pulls those services out from under region control, because from what we understand, if we stay with Eastern Iowa region, they're gonna take them from us also. So it's gonna have, either gonna go away or be moved regardless of the
So
decision.
the question this board is facing is, do we believe in these services, that they add value to our residents, is are we willing to fund them out of another source? Because the region has said that they're not funding them.
Right.
Okay.
And you said so that's a 14-cent impact on the general fund?
Well, between the two, between
So it's a
general
net,
basic and
it's a
general
net plus
supplemental.
14?
Yes.
If we stayed at max allowable levy, at 30 whatever dollars.
Or whatever it would be if we're in another region, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So that was one of the questions that you asked about, is how to retain the trust program that we all feel is vitally important to Muscatine residents. The other thing you asked me about is how do we manage in the interim? And that's gonna be part of my discussion with the SEAL CEO, because I think depending on what your decision is, if your decision and you find that you wanna go with the SEAL region and you talk to board members and that's a comfortable move, then we can talk about contracting similar to what the SEAL region is doing now, and having all that in place by July 1, so that there isn't a lag in services as far as that's concerned.
Has Ryan made her management team aware of our contemplation of this?
Yes, she has.
And I actually met for other reason. I was with CEO boards for all these affected counties, and we had a discussion about it. And I'll say make two comments. One, I think that philosophically we line up very well with this group. Two, they were aware of our contemplation and supportive of our joining that region. They have no concerns or issues. The 4 or 5 members, I have Lee, Henry, I can't remember right.
Probably Des Moines, Louisa.
Yeah, Des Moines, Louisa, there you go. I get those, I met with all those. So,
And I've had long-standing working relationships with all of those boards of supervisors.
and you feel that they would be fairly well compatible with our line of thought?
Philosophically, they have the same kind of conservative fiscal look at things, wanting to make sure that the services are carried out for their citizens, and also wanting to make sure that they're cost effective in the process. And I think that's borne out in the 28E agreement and in the management plan, as they use their county staff for managing the region. They don't add any additional layers to that process. And they're using entities within the community to manage some of the processes as well. So there isn't a big management piece up here. It's very close to the board as well. So the board, having directors as carrying out those management functions, has pretty direct communication with how that works. I know there have been concerns about the current regional board not having access to contracts, not having a clear understanding of what's in those contracts or how much they are even. So in the SEAL region, that's a non-issue.
Yeah, I would say my read of the 2080 and everything I've learned is that they have a much more integrated control system at the regional level than we do. Counties have less freedom maybe than our region, but it's handled in a way that's more closely in line with our philosophy.
I think that would be accurate.
Well, I think some of the freedom counties have exhibited have caused our problems in the region. So, yeah, it's a real challenge. I think everybody on the board, I think we got a note from Jim Irwin, the supervisor from Clinton County, because I know that they're in the throes of the same decision. It's not one you take lightly, because this is a big move, and we don't want to hurt people. But, as I've had discussions around this, Jim, I think, summarized our concerns, my concerns anyway, I won't speak for the rest of the board, very clearly in his 10 points. And that's a lot of issues that I'm not sure you're gonna get through quickly. And it's a confidence thing with me. And I also know that there's a hope right now that the state's gonna bail this region out. And I have spoken to our legislative delegation, who fought very hard for us to get some changes in what we thought were bad legislation. And the comment was made to me is, your CEO sat in our meeting And we told that CEO that disregard that because we're gonna fix it in the next session. And we went ahead and made a bad fiscal decision. And so they are gonna have zero, they're not gonna feel sorry for us. It's gonna be, you're gonna have to pony up the money and fix your own problem. The state is not gonna come in, the legislature is not gonna be willing to help. Pretty much got that message. So we're gonna have to fix this ourselves as a region. We're part of that region now, so we're part of the problem. But, you know, to me, it's just, it's not acceptable that we do that. We were given that specific direction and we didn't take it. We're getting really, our regional board is getting horrible fiscal advice out of our current management arrangement. And then I don't know, and maybe you do, to one of Jim's questions was how much compensation in the region is going to our management.
So the CEO gets paid, 90% of her salary is billable to the county. And then, if I'm correct, Felicia, the fiscal agent David Farmer doesn't get paid, but has a budget $24,000 for administrative expenses.
Correct.
So
That's from the region.
90% of the CEO's salary comes from the region or from Scott County?
Scott only pays 10% directly. Now, it contributes some through the region, you know, I think, is it on a per capita basis? Well, it's whatever the region's budget is paid, so. Yeah, so about 100,000, maybe 110,000 for salary comes from the region, and then 24,000 for the fiscal administrative expenses.
And then you have the management piece of the Robert Young contract.
Correct, they have management fees.
Refresh my memory
Which
on
was-
that again. What's that dollar for Robert Young?
That's the contract with services, but you don't know.
Thank
Let's
you.
just assume it's 8%, which is used frequently in this 8 to 10% for administrative, typically.
I think it's 400 grand a year.
I bet it's a bunch. On
And
4 million, it's a lot.
that 400,000, I don't believe includes the project manager and some of those kinds of things either. Because there is, Jen Tamayo is a crisis manager, and I think she gets paid separately from that management fee. And that's not to say that if the Eastern Iowa region and the board would say, we want to completely revamp the way we are structured in terms of how we manage our stuff, that wouldn't take away some of that layer and put it back to conceivably the directors. But whether or not there is a wherewithal to do that, I don't have any idea.
Jeff, to your point, I've got the most recent income statement or billing statement from Robert Young up. And so we're a quarter into the year, so there's been $100,000 in management fees, so 400 grand a year. Salaries and benefits have been about 408,000. Peer support drop-in is the next biggest item at 208,000, and then crisis stabilization residential and crisis response mobile, total about $250,000. So.
To the region.
Yeah,
These are region expenses, so Muscatine County's paying 25% of those.
So, well, I mean,
We're about 25% of the.
yeah, it's hard to say anymore
Per
how much
capita.
we're paying what.
Theoretically, we should be paying,
That would, yeah, theoretically.
okay.
So programs like the peer drop-in are still gonna be included in the SEAL program?
You know, that's something I have to talk to the CEO about, and that would be an issue of contracting directly, probably with MCSA. Robert Young as well, because Robert Young has peer staff that actually staff that peer center. Robert Young has all of the coordinators that we have in the county. So we'd have to jockey around with some of that kind of stuff. The peer center, I think, is not as big a deal as the coordinators, because I'm not sure that the SEAL region has coordinators like that. I think they use their in-home health coordinators, actually purchase more of those because they're in the system already. and they can move about in the system in terms of case management much more fluidly.
Yeah, so you've got me confused at what these people are and what they're doing. So, you know, because I kind of, you know, I remember back to the day we had case managers in the county. We've always had case managers here. This process has eliminated those folks. And so do we have, so these are Robert Young folks that have hands-on with our residents
Yes,
and eyes on? And
They
does the region board get some, or do you as our director, get some reporting and accountability measures on these to make sure that we're taking care of our people?
there's a report that's given out every month by Robert Young, and it basically talks about how many people they've seen. They're trying to move toward more of an outcomes sort of measurement, but that's in the beginning stages. For the most part, our coordinators that come out of Robert Young are part of the crisis system. So we've got a coordinator that goes to the jail. We've got a coordinator that deals with co-occurring substance abuse and mental health. And we've got a coordinator that's at the emergency department. And they're catching some of those folks there. And then we have another coordinator, and I can't remember what she does, but there's 4 grand total.
If I walk out to the emergency department, I could go look somebody in the eyeballs and I'd say, you're the coordinator?
Yes,
Okay. And they're Robert Young staff?
correct.
So moving to the SEAL program, would we keep those services, place somebody in the SEAL program, or would we lose that completely with not having Robert Young associated with the SEAL?
I think that's something to be determined. I think I'm gonna have to have a conversation with the CEO. I think as we move forward, we're gonna have to look at, one, what does that cost? Is it meeting our needs? And what does the SEAL region have that their system works very well for them? And would it work for us as well, given that we're relatively the same size?
Yeah, it's, I mean, basically there are core services, core plus services.
Correct.
That we're mandated to have within each county. SEAL region has no exemption from that. They have to provide those services. We want to provide those services. The question is the delivery mechanism and the management structure therein, correct?
Very
That's
well
what
said.
we're talking about.
Very well said.
Well, I think that, you know, my opinion on this whole matter is that we have a management problem with our region. And, you know, I think 2 years ago, you know, I was kind of probably not as polite as I could have been in a meeting. And I pretty much let them know that I wasn't happy with the direction, and it's gotten no better. And you know, I think I don't like to be a fool, and you know, so I'm pretty much at a point where I'm ready to leave the region. That's where I'm at. I think, well, it's gonna be a mess. I think we're gonna have to come up, figure out how we're gonna fund our commitments there, how we're gonna transition. But I think we have good people, we'll get through it. But I just don't, it doesn't make sense to me to continue to send money to Scott County for them to extract from our taxpayers and take away from services to our residents. It just doesn't make sense to me. Once shame on you, twice shame on me.
If we did take that action, Felicia, are there any of our current services or people that you're concerned we might lose or not be able to continue?
I'll know that better by the end of the week
Okay.
to find out what limitations or maybe what expansions there are in the SEAL region. I really can't answer that with a great deal of confidence. But after I meet with the CEO, I'll be able to answer that question much better.
Sure, I mean, obviously, we're not gonna have all the information before we make a decision. But knowing as much as possible about what's at risk, you know, obviously there's opportunities for expansion, it looks like, but, you know, I wanna reassure our people, I wanna reassure our clients that our intention is to maintain their services and to improve them, rather than to face inevitable cuts, which I think is what would happen if we stay on.
Mhm. And I'll provide you with a summary of my meeting before the end of the week, so that you have at least some feel for what decision you're gonna be making.
So we have to make our decision by next Monday.
Yes. If we're gonna make a decision, it has to be made by Monday.
And you're gonna have that information through your meeting, at least some of it. Services kept, services alternate, services added, maybe what's lost.
Yes.
Well, I think everybody, we just have to remember that the state has mandated core and core-based services, and that the region must provide, so that the question is, how do you deliver those? And that's what the regions have done. So I think the SEAL region, I would have full faith and confidence that the state is auditing what they're doing, and that they have those services in some manner. They may look different, but, you know, unfortunately, this is a client base, you don't want to see a lot of change, but they've already seen that in the last few years, so I guess I just want to make sure we fix it right, and fix it once. It's not gonna be fun when we did it.
Any other Scott's thoughts, Scott, Jim?
I see nothing. It's gonna get better where we're at. I see nothing that's gonna be, moving towards keeping our costs down, keeping our cost, relative. You're looking at going to a group that has approximately half the population that the current group is that we're in currently. I don't know the exact number of individuals receiving services, but common sense would tell you that it's gonna be considerably less than where we're at right now. You wouldn't have near the, overall management cost, in my mind, and, the history of the current group doesn't show me that we're going in the right direction.
Anybody have anything else? Alicia, thank you again. We will have it on the agenda for next Monday.
So as for clarification, do you want staff to have prepared a draft letter,
For the chair.
application to join the new region, and a letter notifying the region we're in that we're leaving, have those drafted for your consideration next week?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be a good idea, just
Yeah, one in each region, I would say.
Okay.
Right, Alicia, thank you very much. We can find my agenda. Item number 8 is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the October 21st, 2019 regular meeting.
So moved.
Jeff has moved it. Scott has seconded. All those in favor? Item 9 is correspondence. Santos?
Early last week, I had a meeting with the AW in regards to looking at extending their main water main throughout the city, and potential expansion of that, and looking at cost per foot before I'm be able to get a further discussion with the actually approved council. Then Tuesday, I got a letter from Harsco, or no, Ed asking in regards to the Harsco letter slide status update. Then on Saturday, I went up to New Orleans for a Latino Political Network Conference. So I have.
Jeff?
Correspondence, I had, I failed just to tell you, Leslie, last Thursday, I attended a meeting with MPW that hosted a number of the concerned citizens on the proposed transmission line. I think it was an excellent meeting. I think the MPW did a fine job going through the process, talking about why, what the options are, and showing a real willingness to work with the group. I think the neighbors group, I'll call it, was very pleased with the outcome of the meeting, and there's a follow-up meeting scheduled for this Wednesday at 6 p.m. as well, same place in the auditorium, to talk about it. And hopefully I encourage some of the neighbors there to reach out to neighbors that weren't necessarily in the notification area, but that may be affected somewhat as well, because MPW really can't do that because they're bound by rules of what they can do. Certainly neighbors can talk to each other, and they're able to come in and get engaged in the process and listen and give feedback, so that it's an important project for everybody, for the rural residents, for the county, for those neighbors, and I think that MPW is doing a great job of listening and trying to work with people.
Jeff, where's that follow-up meeting?
It's at MPW, and they've had it in their auditorium there, so.
Okay, so MPW Auditorium Wednesday, October 30th at 6 p.m.
Yeah, and the last one was well attended, I'd say at least 50 or 60 people there. Do you agree with that, Dave? I also had some correspondence and been talking a little bit to the neighborhood group, or the trustees for the Hickory Hill subdivision and their water issue and MPW, and I'm trying to encourage them to get some organization around that and get with the people, so I'm trying to help them with basically they need a developer, and they're not familiar with what that entails to get something done through MPW to get this process. They've got issues, and they need to figure out what they're gonna do in moving their water lines. So finding them and moving them, so I'm trying to help with that issue, and we're moving along.
Okay.
Better get done before Keith starts digging dirt. Okay, that's all I have, and then I have to ask you, and my assumption is, and I think I've been communicating with Nancy, maybe I have it, sometimes I do and sometimes I forget, but I've given everything that I had relative to what his FOIA request.
Right, we've given him everything we have. This latest letter, he's asking us to request that particular document from Harsco. It's not a document that they provided to us.
I mean, has he reached out? Do we know to Harsco?
I believe his letter indicates that he has and has not gotten a response.
But I thought his letter said he did a FOIA request with the state for the said letter, said dispute, whatever.
Yeah, I know he asked the state for it. I'm not sure about Harsco. He did ask the state for it, and the response from the state was that they did not have the document. Harsco originally said they had sent that to the state, but it's not something that was sent to us.
So my advice would be just give them our contacts from Harsco and say ask for it yourself, but whether that's really hard.
Just ask Harsco directly.
Yeah.
That's where it came from.
Yeah. Okay, and that was the extent of my
Okay.
correspondence.
I had that as well. I had, I guess, some extensive conversations with Jim Irwin from Scott County about some of the mental health issues, mental health region issues. And a conversation here and there, nothing formal, just about the MPW power line situation. That's about it, Scott.
I just had to ask you, email is all I had.
Doug?
I had the same email that I asked you. I had one road complaint on Iron City Avenue. I talked to Keith about that. I attended the Power and Water on the 24th, and they had a pretty good presentation. And they've got some alternate routes lined up. And plan on attending the coming one this coming Wednesday. We had a 5:30 annual fair board meeting, Scott was at that. And then we elected 40 officers, and then we had a meeting
the Fair Board annual meeting on Tuesday the 22nd, and I'd just like to note that it was they had excellent attendance, most people I've ever seen in an annual Fair Board meeting, and they had put together some silent auction items, 25 of them, and it was just a very nice event that took place, and the information that was given is giving some promise and some hope moving forward. And so we'll see if they're able to continue to raise funding for their efforts, and I'm pretty optimistic about this. I also attended a levy stakeholder meeting on Wednesday the 23rd. That's all I had.
Great. I attended the Eastern Iowa Regional Health meeting, Regional Mental Health Region meeting, last Monday, and saw some fireworks when I asked why as you guys may recall, there's $2 million in transfers that have been requested from the member counties this year. And that was one of the discussions we had recently, is we'll have to approve the first installment of our $311,000 request. And I asked at that meeting on Monday about the thought process that went into to make that request based on per capita numbers. Because just looking at the numbers that we had been provided, I did some quick math, and again, I'm no mathematician, but dividing on the calculator was easy enough, and I found that over the last 5 years of regionalization, contributions to the region on a per capita basis are greatly imbalanced. So Jackson had put in something like $67 per person into the region fund. Cedar was $88. Muscatine was, I want to say, $57 in that range. Even Clinton, having taken 1.7 million out in the last year, was still at $34. If you don't count the money from the state that Scott County received, which I don't feel that you should, Scott County has put in negative $1.34. So every other county has put in a huge amount per person. Scott County's actually withdrawing money from the region per person, I think, which was just illustrative of the difficulties that we've been having.
Why we're in trouble.
And I got no answer as to why that decision was been made, other than, well, it was a regional, it was approved by the regional board. And while that's true, I don't think that's a very good answer. I also asked once again if the fiscal agent regarded that money coming from the state as being properly attributable to Scott County. Basically, whether we should count it in Scott County's money that they chipped in. And he said, well, that money came from Scott County taxpayers. I said, that money came from the state. He said, yes, and Scott County taxpayers are part of the state. So yes, that money came from Scott County taxpayers. It also came from taxpayers in Council Bluffs and Sioux City and Clayton and wherever else in the state.
And Muscatine.
And Muscatine. So, county is part of Scott County. I had a conversation with the CEO afterwards suggesting that it was perhaps not the best public relations strategy to claim that $4 million came from Scott County. And Jim Irwin has joined me in that, from Clinton County, has joined me in that assessment. I think it's just one of the things that's one of those little things that has added up to the mistrust, I think, that has been fostered throughout the region, unfortunately. So it was a tense meeting. We all left as friends, I think. I'm not sure if Dawn from Cedar County is going to talk to me for the next couple of weeks, but she'll get over everything. But yeah, it was a challenging discussion.
Probably not for all.
So that was me.
I had a regional workforce board meeting on the 23rd, Wednesday the 23rd. We're in the throes of this reorganization of the regional workforce system. So we have a lot of work to do, but we're waiting on something from the feds. We won't know. We have to have it done by December, but they'll say they have to have a decision by end of this month, okay. That's, we'll hope to hear, but we're working on that. I attended the levy stakeholder meeting, as well, and then we had the bi-state regional commission on Wednesday as well. That was it.
I had the West Liberty Economic Development meeting. We are working with the West Liberty City Council in regards to trying to come up with a leadership program, similar to I think what we have here in Muscatine, trying to encourage more local citizens to get into city council, commission.
Are they gonna redo, they had that originally, right? Are they gonna re-energize that or?
They're trying to re-energize it and we're trying to look at that.
Maybe a little different.
Yeah, a little more creative ideas about, encourage maybe youth and still, get more local citizens in the city limits to, join into different councils and work on projects in the community.
I think the Muscatine one's a good model. It's been very.
They weren't very familiar with it, but I kind of encouraged them to reach out to some of the Grand Indians and things like that to look at some ideas. And that's all I had for.
One thing I did forget, I apologize, guys. I'm not sure whether, it's not committee, I guess it's correspondence. I attended an open house last week at Senior Resources at, I think it's 1808 Mulberry, and had good conversations with a lot of folks there. One of the things they're doing is, please you have to help me on this, is it Vision 2020? That's what it's called. So it's something I think that we've long encouraged is several groups in town that provide services are getting together, appointing a common leadership person to help, coordinate and synergize their efforts. I think it's gonna be very positive. And I understand she's just been hired, is it Brianna or something?
Cheryl Plank.
Cheryl Plank, I wasn't even close. Plank, okay.
Were you at the same meeting?
There was wine served, so, I'm gonna let that. Alrighty. Item number 11 is receive information from county employees. Yes,
I
Sherry?
just want to say in reference to the Fair Board annual meeting fundraiser dinner that raised a little over $3,700. Kelsey called me, she took that money, applied it to their note at the bank, which they consolidated into one note, and we have a claim in for next time to match that $3,700 that was fundraised.
Perfect.
So,
Congratulations to them. Eric, you're double dipping today.
Yeah, something that just came up next month. Jeff and I will probably be attending the Lower Cedar Watershed Management Authority meeting. We're into year 2, or going into year 2 now. For some of you that are newer on the board, when we joined this Watershed Management Authority, there was support for it, but not a lot of support for us. Doing a lot of direct funding of this group if they could go after grants. So I think last year we did give them $500 with some seed money that enabled them to go after some grants. That request is going to be made again for the entities to give them $500 or $1,000. What I propose is that we invite Holly Howard from NRCS, the Watershed Management Coordinator, to come in and kind of brief you on how that first seed money was used, the grant that they have received already, what that money is going to be used for, and the next grant that they're going. It'd be a fairly short presentation, but I know they're going to remind us that we haven't given any money yet for this year. That request is going to be reiterated to us, and I just think it'd be good to hear from her directly, because there was a nice grant that they got, and there's some great ideas, I think, for some more significant funding for what little they're asking for, but I'd like to have you guys hear that.
Sherry, I don't recall in budget, I thought we talked about that in the budget sessions and put it in a request. Did we not?
I don't know that we did.
I don't think we put anything in for,
one time.
right.
Okay, I thought we did. I thought we did, yeah.
She mentioned it to me, and I just think it might be a good idea for her to come speak. We've got a couple new board members since last time that was considered.
Yeah, so if everybody remembered, the upper Cedar watershed has had great success at doing some things, and kind of this is all part of the water quality issues, and I don't know how many people have paid a lot of attention, but there's a lot of fingers pointing at Iowa for the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, and there's a lot of they're saying our agricultural practices and we've heard a lot of this chatter. But anyway, so this is an area that where governmental bodies are kind of joining, and it's really every governmental entity along a watershed. They try to, what they're finding is for every dollar spent at the head of a watershed, you get about, multiples of benefit at the lower end. And we've seen it with increased flooding, high water events, all of that we need to support these kind of efforts, I believe. And so this is, I think Eric and I have had some conversations about areas that I think we're all familiar with here, that maybe if we had some watershed activity, we could maybe put some, buffer zones and things in for some of the flooding events to help these high waters. And these are the kinds of groups that are putting together. We all were pretty concerned about the funding. I think the original, the coordinator was a grant that the Nature Conservancy wrote a grant and got a 2-year funding.
I believe it's two or
She's
three.
probably almost in 2 years too, so that'll be a decision too, as we start to look at our effectiveness in the watershed and what we're doing. But I think they got a grant for 2-year funding, and then they were after a big planning grant.
And we got that.
Part of that, they got that.
They got
funding.
that, and now they'd like to apply for a grant for an actual fairly large-scale hydraulic analysis of the lower Cedar, and it'd be a fairly large grant and a large endeavor, but.
So I think they do good work, and it's a good investment, I believe, and they're trying to do it with, well, I think Johnson County is actually doing the fiscal agent work, right, with no charge. The Soil and Water Conservation Board had picked up, they ran the grant through the local Muscatine County Soil and Water Conservation Board, and she's works for them and in their office, and they're providing that. So they're trying to do it kind of on a shoestring budget, but as the last year, these large grants, there's cost involved, mailings, you gotta get some experts to get these grants just prepared, because they're pretty extensive and competitive. So that's kind of what they've used them for, and Eric has been kind of more active than me lately on the watershed. They're kind of tough meetings to make sometimes, timing, but it's a good group, but I think the right intention, and something we're gonna have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think our cautious approach to funding was very appropriate last year in a very small amount, but I think I'd like to have her address you, because some of the other counties were pleased and have upped their pledge amount, but I think that's, certainly a decision you folks are gonna have to make based on how they've spent the money, where they plan on going after the money, and so, at your direction, I'd like to invite her maybe next Monday to give you a brief overview. Will that work?
Next Monday's kind of nasty
Okay.
already. When's your meeting?
13th, Jeff? It wouldn't have to be necessarily before. I know they'll hit us up
The
again,
11th.
but we could.
We don't have a meeting that day, it's a
That's
holiday.
a holiday.
Right.
Well,
So-
we'll just get it, if that's what you wanna do, we'll get her at the next viable
Okay,
meeting.
Yep.
And I just think it'd be good, instead of Jeff and I trying to come back and rehash all the technical data that she already has for how they've spent the money and what they've gotten.
It's the 12th.
12th, yeah, that's what I thought.
So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with what they've done. I think that probably likely, something we'd likely fund, but obviously, yeah, we have to have a discussion.
Do you want to hear from her directly then, or do you want to wait and have Jeff and I report, or I report back, or? I just thought there might be some value in hearing directly from her. on how
I'd like to hear
Okay.
from you guys.
I would like to hear from her.
Yeah, so maybe,
We'll go.
Afterwards or before?
I don't think it's a huge deal if it's after our next meeting. I just think
it's
it's just,
the 19th or whatever that.
we can just tell them that the board needs to make the decision on the funding request, at our next meeting, and
Yeah.
when you make a decision.
Okay. There's probably quite a few people that don't even realize how many miles that the Nature Conservancy owns on the Cedar River corridor on the adjoining ground on either one side of the river or both sides of the river, up and down the entire corridor. I don't know the exact, as we were talking, I was thinking about that, the amount of miles or percentage of miles that they actually own of the drainage system currently. And, that's just something that's an interesting fact on this.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll reach out to her then and we'll get something scheduled.
Thank you, Eric. Any other county employees? Nobody's jumping up. Item number 12, with the administration office. 12A is discussion and possible action to approve the following resolutions, and unless there's an objection, I would propose we do them all at once. I'll just read them off. Will that work? Or do we have to do them separately because they're roll calls?
I think you have to do them separately.
All right, so Nancy objects because she likes to follow the rules and all that.
I'll move to approve.
Item A1 is Resolution 1028-1901. Jeff has moved and Santos is second, which transfers funds from the general basic fund to the GIS fund. Roll call vote, Santos.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
I vote aye, Scott.
Aye.
Doug. Resolution 10, it is approved. Resolution 1028-1902, transferring funds from the rural services fund to the GIS fund. Roll call vote.
Move to approve.
Jeff has moved.
Second.
Doug is seconded.
I was gonna keep it the same one.
Right. I would like to mix it up. Doug.
Okay, yes.
Scott.
Aye.
I vote aye, Jeff.
Aye.
Santos. Item number 3, Resolution 1028-1903, transferring funds from the general basic fund to the Historic Preservation Commission fund.
Move to approve.
Jeff has moved.
Second.
Santos is seconded. Let's start with Scott.
Aye.
Doug. Santos. Jeff.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Resolution number 4, 1028-1904, transferring funds from the Rural Services Fund to the Secondary Roads Fund.
Move to approve.
Jeff has moved.
Second.
Santos is seconded. Jeff. I vote aye. Scott.
Aye.
Doug. Santos. Santos aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Resolution number 5, 1028-1905, transferring funds from the General Basic Fund to the Conservation Equipment Reserve Fund.
Move to approve.
Jeff is moved and Santos is seconded. I vote aye. Scott.
Aye.
Doug.
Aye.
Santos.
Aye.
And Jeff.
Aye.
Last but not least, Resolution 1028-1906, transferring funds from the General Basic Fund to the Secondary Roads Fund.
Move to approve.
Jeff has moved, Santos is seconded. Jeff.
Aye.
Santos.
Aye.
Doug. Scott.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you all. Item 12B is action to accept the 2020 holiday schedule from Muscatine County.
In your packet is a copy of the memo that we always send out to employees who fall under the board's holiday schedule. We allow them to vote with a clear explanation that this is just to give you guys feedback, that you're not obligated to set holidays based on the outcome of that vote. This year, the top vote, it was pretty close, but the top vote getter was to designate only 8 holidays and then have 3 personal days for 2020. Second top vote was to have December 24th and December 31st as holidays with 1 personal day. That does cause some payroll issues on our end, because technically there's a payroll that would be due January 1st of 2021. We're already going to have to move it back because that January 1st will obviously be a holiday. If you make December 31st a holiday, we have to move it even farther back, farther up in the week, which sometimes causes issues,
With getting it all done in direct deposit and all that.
which meeting direct deposit deadlines.
To me, it makes the most sense, on the very last choice, the 8 days and 3 personal days. That gives the individual the flexibility to, if they want to have the 24th, they use a personal day. If they want the 31st, they can have a personal day. Gives the employee the flexibility. That makes the most sense to me, unless there's a reason.
My only concern, and I want to talk to the group of managers, because office continuity and for the,
That's my point.
how do we keep our windows open for the public, who we're here to serve. You know, as a manager, my history as a manager, I would not like having extra personal days. If I'm gonna have to deal with staffing issues, I just assume this office is closed. or not, because it just, you know, half a crew is not a crew when you're trying to do business, and it just winds up causing too many problems.
And the elected officials also have the flexibility to close their offices if they so choose. They have to require their employees to use vacation time, but it's not uncommon for at least some of the elected offices in this building to close some or all of Christmas Eve, which leaves us in a situation where we've got public coming in potentially irate, because the building's open, but the office they've come to do business with isn't open. So that's less of an issue on New Year's Eve day. I don't know if that's ever been an issue, but it's very common on Christmas Eve day.
It's more common on Christmas Eve.
For the elected officials to close their office for the day or half a day.
Well, it can be an issue on New Year's Eve for motor vehicle.
Yeah.
If they, if they have till the end of the month and they come in and the office is closed because administration can't. So they come to our window and say, can you take the money? And it's caused some rough days.
Yeah, that's the only thing I could see is, you're either open or you're closed. I mean, I like, flexibility is nice, maybe we can just go to 9 holidays. Maybe we just have too many.
Does the administration have a recommendation?
I guess my recommendation, my preference would be that we would designate December 24th as a holiday and have 2 personal days. We typically have,
That's the first one.
we're typically pared down to little or no staff on December 24th anyway. Typically, the office will have 1 or 2 people in it because everybody else wants to be off traveling or preparing. We rarely have much business on December 24th. People have got other things on their minds other than coming in here and doing business, so that eliminates the issue of people showing up and some offices being open and some being closed. So that would be my preference. I think that makes things run the smoothest, but
Which one was the one that created payroll issues? Was that 32?
December 31st
December 3rd.
is the one that causes us a payroll.
41. 41.
Because that's your last.
The vote with 41 people is the one that caused, the December 31st date is the one that causes this an issue.
And the 43 at the very bottom, what is that one, how's that one different? It just takes.
That's you just designate those 8 holidays at the top, and then there's 3 personal days.
And the issue that causes, Santos, and I would guarantee you what will happen, is the elected officials more than likely, or some of them, not gonna say they're all, but let's just say 3 out of 4, will probably close their office on that day. And then, so now all of a sudden the county's open, but when people think of the county, they think of these elected offices where they transact most of their business, and they're closed. And that just causes a rub with the public. It would aggravate me to lose in daylight, so. You're either open or you're closed. But I'm still not over 4:30, so whatever.
Jeff's trying to start riots.
No matter what.
Do we have any strong
He
feelings
doesn't
about
think we
anybody?
should close at 4:30.
I mean, if that's, I kind of, I guess as far as them closing, I mean, that'd be the only thing is would they close or are we assuming that?
What do we have in place this year?
We have 8. This current year, we have 8.
3 scheduled with 3.
Yeah, yeah.
And have they closed?
We don't know. We haven't hit Christmas Eve yet. I can bet you that, I can almost guarantee you that Christmas Eve of this year will have several elected officials close their offices either for the day or at noon.
How about we, I guess I'll move to make the number the 32 and then we'll evaluate this again next year.
Yep, every year we bring it back.
You're making a motion for the first option?
Yeah.
Well, I second that.
Okay. Jeff is, Santos has moved, Jeff is seconded. Any further discussion on the motion to designate Christmas Eve is the ninth holiday and have 2 personal days. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you for everyone who put in their feedback, we appreciate it. Okey-doke. Item 12C is action to accept the 2019 payroll claims.
Move to approve.
Jeff has moved,
Second.
Scott has seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Anybody? All right, we are adjourned.